Welcome and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Double B Creates. This is Kevin, and today we're doing a solo episode. Brad couldn't be here, so we're just gonna wing it. So today we are talking to Tammi Moses. She's the founder and chief encouragement officer of Homes Are For Living LLC. The Hoarding Situation, which is a veteran, woman-owned and operated business located in Oak Arbor, Washington. So today's topic is going to be hoarding, and it's going to be fun because this is something we haven't discussed before. So what Tammi is doing is she provides consultations and assessments, also provides workshops on the issue of hoarding specifically. She believes in inspiring others to take their adversity and use it for the greater good. She's the voice of adult kids, of parents that hoard. She's also a voice of the youth living in the hoard. And you can connect with Tammi at homesareforliving@gmail.com. She's also on Facebook and Instagram at The Hoarding Solution. So thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time today to talk about what you're doing, and I'm excited. Let's dive in.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. I'm happy to be here.
So what usually we start off with like, where can we find you? But that was already in your intro, which is awesome. So what kind of got you into the idea or the profession of helping people with the issue of hoarding?
Well, honestly, it wasn't something I really intended to talk about publicly. It's not something I set out to do. I originally thought I wanted to deal with houses or housing and look at some of those issues that we're facing as far as lack of affordable housing and homelessness. And as I started to look at that, I realized that I wasn't really sure what to do in that realm. And I had a business mentor ask me, what else did I know about? What else did I think about? He said, all entrepreneurs have plan B. So I thought about it for a second and I said, well, I happen to know about hoarding. And they're like, do you know about the shows? Do you know that exists? I'm like, yes, I do. And so at first I was like, what in the world am I going to talk about? How do I possibly take that, my experience, and turn that into something? And what I started to realize is that my experience growing up in that situation was something that people weren't really talking about. And part of my issue with the shows is, while it does sensationalize hoarding, I believe, and it does bring awareness to the problem, it's so short and compact, and there's a whole bunch more people that are impacted besides that person that hoards and, maybe their therapist and the person that's hauling the stuff away. And so it's kind of snowballed in the last couple years into, who's talking about this? Even people who, like, say, organizers who come in and help people organize their home, then they get pulled into a hoarding situation, and that's not the same as
Right.
Let's organize a closet. So education piece for people is a big part of what I'm working on now.
Well, and you brought up organizing, and I was thinking of that. What's that show with Marie Kondo?
Yes.
Where she helps people organize their houses and stuff. I think, and I actually have a funny story too, but it's kind of funny because my wife used to call me a hoarder. Like she was joking about it, but I didn't grow up with all the money. I didn't have all the things I wanted. I had what I needed. single mom. She did her absolute best. And
Mm.
it's kind of funny because I grew up knowing that eventually you're going to need something. And then I met my wife, and she grew up in a totally different scenario where her mom has a philosophy of, if you haven't used it in 6 months, get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, 6 months? Like, I don't use my lawnmower in 6 months. I'm not going to, I've got to use it in the summer. So it's kind of funny because we're so different, but we've kind of found this weird compromise over the years. And we've kind of started doing these new routines and stuff like that I want to get into a little bit. But there's a difference, in my opinion, and you're the professional, so correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a difference between holding on to something knowing that you're going to use it again versus holding on to something because you think a candy wrapper is going to provide you some sort of sentimental value 6 years down the road.
Well, and I would say that is true, that there is a difference between, like in your example, the lawnmower, right? I haven't used mine in probably 4 months either, but it's, it's there because I know I'm going to use it, versus the candy wrapper or the daily things that we, that we should be tossing away. And part of the problem for someone that hoards is that they value the lawnmower as much as they value the candy wrapper.
Right.
And so they're not differentiating between the fact that this other item is going to have no value for anyone else, but this one does. And you could probably sell your lawnmower if you needed to, versus not being able to sell a candy wrapper. And, maybe Uncle John gave him the lawnmower, and then Uncle John also used the candy wrapper, or, that's the last piece of candy they ever saw him eat. And so now there's this attachment to it. So they're holding on to those two things for the same reason, but one has value and one doesn't. And that's part of the problem in those situations is other people will say, this really has no value. Why are you keeping it? And that person's like, well, it has value to me. And so then you start getting too many valuable pieces of things.
No, I can see that because like my son, my oldest son just started kindergarten this year, and he brings home so much freaking paper. It drives me nuts. But at the same time, I'm like, which one of these do I keep for records, versus which ones can I ditch and throw away? Then I got to worry about him seeing me throw it away because.
And, that's so valid because what do you keep? How many things do you keep posted on your fridge from your kids,
Right.
And at what point can you say, I have a whole file cabinet for each kid, and I hear parents struggling with that because you don't want your kid to think you don't value what they're doing. But at the same time, what do you do with it all? Some people scan it or take photos, I know, or else they rotate out, like, the pictures that they keep on the fridge. But I mean, it's kind of a valid point. What do you do with all that paperwork from your kids,
Right. And I mean, and that's a perfect example, just using kids, is they're growing, they're learning, and you're so excited that they're learning and they're growing up. But then there's the aspect of, I want them to stay little, so I got to remember all this stuff that they did when they were little. Me personally, I'll keep like maybe one thing a week, and I've got kind of like a little file folder, and that's it. I mean, that's going to be all that he holds. But it's kind of funny, the difference between a parent and a kid, because when I was in school, I would keep everything that I did throughout the year intentionally. And then after the school year was over, I would celebrate that I graduated that grade and moved on. So I would have a fire pit and I would start it with all those papers.
But there is something about that process, and you're releasing, that year and that school year. And I don't know what your school experience was like, but I was pretty happy to be done with school when I
Oh, yeah.
was done. So I can see that being like a, hey, I made it, I survived, and I'm going to just let it all go and be ready for the new year, you know?
Right. And I will tell you, I was bullied quite a bit, and it got worse as I got older. I ended up switching schools, same story. So now that school's over, it's been like, what, 12 years? 13 years. So school sucked. I graduated late with a 1.9 GPA. So
Mm.
it was just a bad experience. But so that was kind of my release, is I would just burn everything and say, cool, next step.
Well, you know, and even now there's like, you know, rituals that you can do to, you know, you write a, well, well, first, I appreciate you sharing about school. School's also a challenge for me. Not, I did well in certain subjects and then I did terrible on others. And so I always like struggled between being really excelling in writing in English and Spanish, but then being terrible in math and not understanding the process and how that worked. And it was always a struggle for me. But, you know, school is hard. I think even now it's hard, especially if for some reason you don't fit whatever
Mhm.
mold or thing that you're supposed to roll into. It's really hard, I think, to be someone that is different and stands out for whatever reason. I mean, bullying's a real thing, and uh, it's still happening now. You know, and I think that as a society, sometimes we haven't gotten kinder in that regard. We're not, still haven't quite figured out how to be more tolerant of people that are a little different for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. And I'm not going to give my full opinion on that topic, but we did do an episode with Colby K and his project that he's working on, talking about teen suicide. He's building a docu-series about it. So if anyone is listening, that's still in school or has interest in that, go check out that episode with Colby K, because he's working on some incredible stuff. And pretty soon he's going to break it out and get it into TV and things like that. But school was rough. I mean, I think it's rough for everybody, and there's always um, different subjects that are going to be worse than others. There's also the social issues. That was my biggest thing, that and math. The only reason I passed math was because I knew computers, and
mm.
I changed it, changed that grade, so I passed. So there's that. Don't do that. But
Yeah, not advisable, but you
it's kind of
know,
funny because my story, just super quick. I graduated high school with 1.9. I graduated 2 months late, still got my diploma
mm,
versus my GED. Waited 3 years, decided I was going to go to college. I was going to do something with my life. Me being an idiot, started studying psychology. Now I have 2 degrees in psychology. I still work in the computer world, making
mm.
triple what I would make with the degree that I have in psychology now. And then it's just like you got to really pay attention to what the colleges are telling you versus what your aspirations are.
And that's so true. And especially with the student loan epidemic and things like that, I mean, people are getting into debt, getting these degrees that aren't, you know, aren't really going to help them. And I mean, I did go to college as an older adult, and I mean, I'm glad that I did, and I had, you know, my GI Bill and stuff to help with that, but I still ended up incurring loans, and I did get a bachelor's in psychology as well. So
Hey, we
I
have the
see
same
it's,
degree.
we have the same degree. And so it's helped me understand that most people have some kind of brokenness in their family or in themselves, and there's a continuum, and it doesn't mean you're all bad or all good. It just means we've all had some kind of experience in our lives that makes it life difficult sometimes. And originally I thought I'd go to law school. Well, but then I thought I wanted to be a mental health professional. No, don't want to do that either. So my whole reasons for going kind of evaporated, and but now that it does pull into what I do now. So I had a conversation with a good friend over the weekend who's known me since I was a little kid. And I mean, she's like a kind of a second mom to me, but we were having this conversation about the fact that God, I hope that's all right if I say that, but
Say
if
whatever
God
you want.
is protecting you and leading you, even though you may not know, you can't see it at the time. You are like, what is going on? Why do I have to go through this? And then later you can look at it and say, oh, now I see I was being protected or led or helped. And I didn't always have that favorable opinion when I was going through things. But now in retrospect, I can say, okay, now I understand why. Well, I've never really talked about this on a podcast, but for example, I don't have children, and there's medical reasons why. And part of that is my younger brother had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And so there was always this, if you had a kid, you could have one that has this problem too. And so I was always very cognizant of that from a very young age. And so in part, it's a personal choice to not take that risk, to have a child that could have that level of disability. And so as a woman, it can be very challenging when someone says, oh, well, have you ever wanted children? How complicated would you like my answer to be? Are you asking if it crossed my mind? Yes. Are you asking me why I don't have them now? Well, maybe I don't want to get into that with you. I just met you yesterday, So I mean, there's levels of disclosure that over time I've gotten more comfortable with. But when you start in business and you start getting more vocal and visible, it can be really challenging to figure out what pieces will you share and what pieces will you not share. And it's part of why, for me, things evolved into, I recently I rebranded to the Hoarding Solution, and it's a DBA for what I have now, but it still was that process of realizing that maybe you know more that you could share, and the more you're willing to step out and be vulnerable, the more you can connect with other people. And I still consider myself a pretty private person, yet I see the need for us as people to connect with other people. And one way to do that is to be vulnerable and ugly cry and all those things that most of us in general would avoid.
Well, I think a lot of that too, and I'm gonna state this and I'm gonna backtrack, but holy crap, vulnerability.
It's a hard word, vulnerability.
So I had a brain trauma like 4 weeks ago, and I'm still like trying to get my speech back.
Oh.
Yeah, it was stupid. But so anyway, I think being vulnerable is something that everybody is taught not to do. Because
right.
it makes you weak. There's a stigma around it, and then you're weak, or you're a wussy, or whatever it be, whether I mean, it's different stereotypes whether you are a male or a female, but
Mm-hmm.
I think being vulnerable, and I can say that one, not vulnerability. Holy crap. Um, it
It's
just
all
like
right.
it's something that uh, like Nick Matash, I love the guy so much, and that's one of the big things he teaches is coming out and opening up and being yourself and not fearing judgment, because with men especially, I think personally is the stigma is just way too up there, where if you get hurt and you cry, you're a wuss, or if you wreck your truck and break your neck and you go to the hospital, if you don't recover from it, then you're not this big burly man anymore. I mean, it's just like I can't even really think of a great example, but it's stupid. Really.
Well, it's really, I think it's very unfair for the expectation to be a human male and have no emotion and have no vulnerabilities, have no um, weaknesses, or be allowed to feel an emotion. I think it's why I think men um, isolate, hide, um, disconnect, and then once you do that, your rates for doing other things increase, as far as suicide and disengaging from your family. And I just see where men cry too. Men have emotions, and I think it's not a valid message for them to be told to don't have those things. And I don't actually think, at least me personally now at my advanced age, that a man showing emotion is a weakness. I think it is vulnerable, and you're going to hear about it probably from your buddies and people, but um you know, I don't think it's fair to have this higher expectation for men to be strong and burly and never need anything, um, because I just think that that's really inaccurate. And I can remember my grandma saying, my boys had emotions as well as my girls. Both my sons and daughters had emotions, and they needed to feel those and process them. So it just seems at some point we have that divergence where men are supposed to be strong and never weak, and women are allowed to be. And I think there's a lot of confusion sometimes around what's allowed or what isn't. And I just think that men need to have some space as well. And I remember when I first, now my boyfriend now, and he asked me, "Are you going to tell me to stop going hunting?" And I'm like, "Why? That's something you enjoy and you like to do, and it's guy time, and please go enjoy it. And then when you come back, then we will have things to talk about, and you'll have stories to tell me, and I'll be able to tell you about the dog because I kept your dog while you went hunting." And so I think it's in relationships that you have to find ways to still be able to do your own thing, healthy things, and then be able to come back together again. And I think there's too much, the idea that women need to be rescued is is just as damaging as men must rescue. I don't know if I'm making that sense, but I think in some ways we kind of rescue each other, and it's not mutually exclusive based on your gender. You're stepping in when you need to, and then they're stepping in when they need to. And if you're both kind of pulling for the same goals, you're going to step in and help each other without really going, "Oh, this is a man's job," or "This is a woman's job." um, that partnership is really valuable, I think.
What's funny is, and I'm totally sideballing here, but we just bought a new TV the
Mm-hmm.
other day, and I needed help putting it on the wall. It's a 75-inch. I'm only 6 foot.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't reach, you know. So I tell my wife, I was like, I need you to help me put this up on the bed so I can put the mount on and stuff. She's like, you need to call your friends. I'm like, no, you can do it. And she's like, well, it's so heavy. I'm like, no, you can do it. Trust me. And so I get it all done, and I'm like, we're going to take it from this room, put it up on the wall. I just need you to lift your side. And she did it. And she was like, I didn't think I would be able to do that. And I was like, see, you can do more than you think you can.
Mm-hmm.
And now today her side hurts. She thinks she pulled a muscle, but it's just one of those things. Like, women are equally as capable as men at pretty much anything, as long as you set your mind to it. And men, I will tell you right now, as a father, I am not capable of everything a woman can do.
I can't do, I would say that there are things I would not choose to do that men do. But overall, I think in general, yes, anything that you're trying to do or figure out, you know, I see it, at least from older women that I know, their choices were be a nurse, be a teacher, or get married. And that was kind of how you were steered. And now, at least now, you have choices where you could be an engineer, or you could go in the military, you could do some of these other things.
Right.
And you've got more options, but it's also can be challenging if you're stepping into some of those new roles or new situations where a lot of women haven't been before. But like, for example, I'm very grateful I live in America because I can vote, I can own property. As a female person, I have rights that would not have in some other countries. And,
Right.
I can walk down the street, I can drive my own car. There's just things that I can do that I am very grateful that I can do. But I also don't believe that women are, I don't consider myself a feminist, shall we say. I don't believe that angry women should take over the world. I just think that there's a way to to find balance somewhere.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
But and I know other people would say, oh, well, of course you are, because look at all the things you've done, non-traditional things, going to the military, whatever. But, at least for me, going in the military wasn't really about that. It was about, how do I get out of here? I want to go do stuff, and staying here is not cutting it for me. So, hello.
Hey, Brad.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
He did show up.
Yeah.
So
I
we
hear
were
there was delays.
I need alcohol. That's all I'm gonna say.
Quick recap. We're talking about how Tammi is on the cusp, or not the cusp, but like of the opinion that women are equal, but she's not a feminist.
Because
Okay.
I just think I see so many angry people that gravitate toward that word, or that idea. And I'm like, have I been angry? Yes. But am I, in general, ticked off at the whole world? No.
So you're
And
not.
I just think,
You're not going to run down the street with a hat on your head that's shaped like a vagina and scream.
no. No, I'm not.
You see all that? That was insane.
Yeah, that was weird.
But
Yeah.
And that's my point. I don't feel like that is moving us forward.
No.
As far as discourse or anything. I just think that's like, what are you doing? And so I had a pink hat that I had to get rid of, honestly, because I was like, I can't wear it.
So I think that was actually a really good segue, because we're talking about women's rights and things like that. And we do only have one scripted question every time we do an episode. And that is, what in your mind is success? How would you define success?
Well, I would say it is finding what your purpose and your passion is, and finding a way to make that what you do. And I would also say success is not all about money, which for me, that's been a mindset shift into success is balance and abundance in all things, not just money. So so for me, money is a tool, and the more tools you have, the more you can help other people, the more things you can do with those tools. And I also believe success is about impact. How can you positively impact your family, your community, in the work you do, whether it's in a job or in a business, how are you positively impacting your community? And then I also think it's about freedom. Can I walk my dog at 2 on a sunny afternoon? Or am I stuck somewhere I don't really want to be because I'm making the money? So I think you have to look at not only what makes you, some people would say what makes you happy, and happiness is good, but I think there's more. And once you start looking at what can you bring to the world, how can you positively impact it, I think that increases your ability to find success. And I wouldn't say, like, for example, I look forward to going camping, and I want to be able to go do that, and I want to enjoy it, and I want to go for 3 days or whatever and just go do that thing. And frankly, being disconnected from Wi-Fi isn't always bad. It's a good thing. Like, oh, I can't get online. Oh, darn.
Yeah. Well, I like it. That really aligns with my idea as well. So, yeah, that resonates a lot. So we totally sidebarred. We were talking.
Totally did, huh?
we talked. We were talking about hoarding, and then just went off on a freaking tangent, like way out in left field, because we were talking about school, talking about mindset. Women's rights.
Which, wow, I've never brought that one up either. I don't think so. I'm like, wow, where'd that come from?
That happens.
Welcome
a lot.
to Double B.
That happens so much, almost every episode, where somebody's like, I've never shared this, and then they tell us, which we love so much, because that says something to us that people are resonating with what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate that. But I want to kind of draw back onto the topic, which is rare. I never do that. But when you're hired because you are the hoarding solution, what is the first thing you look for? What is the first thing that you look for, as well as the first couple steps that you take in order to help a client?
Well, primarily, I'm looking to make a personal connection with the person. And a lot of times I'll speak to the person that around how I approach the person that hoards. And that is, a lot of times no one's been talking with them. Someone's been talking at them. Someone's angry. Someone's telling them to clean up their mess. Someone's telling them they're lazy. All this negative stuff has been pushed at them. And so my first objective is to let them know that I want to talk with them. I want them to tell me their story. I want them to be able to share with me what is going on. And if someone lets me into their space, I consider that to be kind of a sacred moment, because someone may have not been in their space for 10, 20 years. And so my first goal is to be able to connect with them. And I'm not saying I don't see the mess or the clutter, I don't smell it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I really try to hone in on the person and focus on the person. And so my first step is to try to have a conversation. Sometimes that's an email or a phone call. A lot of people reach out on Facebook, which is fine because it's very benign. It's a simple introduction. If you are a person that's concerned about a family member or a friend or a neighbor, I basically try to get to the same deal. You as the person, tell me what you see and what's going on, and then tell me what you know about the story. And then I would still want to connect with the person with the issue, because there's too many times that person is shoved aside and not allowed to participate in the decision-making process as far as what happens with their things. And helping them learn to make decisions is part of keeping them from recreating that situation again, hopefully. Um, Usually what we will do is a virtual consultation if you are at a distance, or if you are nearby, we'll do a walkthrough, and I'll just walk through your space with you, and you tell me what's going on, and then I will take that and create a summary of what we've talked about and what your goals are, so that you have something to go by. And then if you want to work with me after that, great. But if not, then here's still, an assessment. I don't like that term, assessment. here's what we talked. Here's a summary of what we talked about, and here's what you told me. Based on what you told me, here's what we're working toward, and here's how you can do that. And I can either do it broad level, or I can, like, one basket from the kitchen sink, or I can do, start in the corner of the bathroom and do XYZ. But really it's about that personal connection. And I think what I see in hoarding is families are disconnected, and that stuff becomes a reason why they aren't connected. And finding a way to reduce that amount of stuff would allow them to create some additional connections. I can't believe how many people will say, I've never met my grandkid because my kid won't bring them over to my house. And generally that person isn't aware that their hoarding is part of the problem.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think I was going to mention it earlier, is I think that your psychology degree is really helping in that realm. Even though you're not technically working in the psychology field,
it comes into play.
A level of psychology that comes with hoarding.
You're right, and it's huge. And the hoarding, the stuff itself, is a manifestation of other things that are going on.
Right.
And there's the clinical definition, because you can hoard and be diagnosed with a hoarding disorder, but just because you hoard doesn't mean you're going to meet that criteria. And so there's a continuum there. But if you don't deal with whatever's going on underneath that's causing you to hoard, you're going to repeat that behavior, even if you survive a forced clean out or move to a new location. If you aren't dealing with, I consider it unaddressed trauma. Things have happened in your life that haven't been dealt with. And I know, kids that come out of foster care, kids that have had traumatic, chaotic things, often seem to show up as people that hoard later on, at least from what I've observed. And if you don't address some of those underlying things, that is going to be how you manifest your issues. But also it can be dormant. So someone could have been fine most of their life, and then there's a divorce, or there's a death in the family, or there's some kind of big crisis, chaotic thing, and then hoarding becomes their defense mechanism. It becomes their response to the situation. And so it doesn't always, it can show up later on, but it's almost like a traumatic event can trigger that behavior.
You know, that first example, I saw it click in my own head just in the camera, where like foster care you mentioned, for example, you grow up having nothing. So then you get to a point in your life where you can have stuff and you want to hold on to that stuff because you're in a position that you always wish that you would be. But then it gets to a point where you refuse to get rid of anything.
Anything.
So,
and that's the problem with the whole keep what you love thing. That's great, except for if you love everything in your apartment and you have nowhere to sleep or eat or use the bathroom, you love the things too much.
right.
But the whole foster care thing, the other aspect of that is sometimes kids are brought out of situations and brought into what would appear to be a carpeted, nice residence, and then they're hoarding food or something like that. And then you have to look at, why is that kid doing that? Because even though now they're not in that environment anymore, why are they doing it now? And I think that's another educational aspect of it that people need to be aware of, that just because you pull someone, whether it's a kid or not, out of that situation, it doesn't mean their behavior is going to be different, unless you're addressing why that behavior is happening in the first place.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and that's something I'm actually experiencing right now. I'm not going to share the story at this point or go into depth about it, but when you said that, I was like, oh, okay.
And it's interesting. People give me feedback. They're like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, or oh, I didn't realize. I'm like, yes, exactly. That's why I'm having a big mouth about it, because there is that need. I started something called Elephant Chat, their Elephant Mug Chat, and I asked people, what are the topics we should be talking about? The elephants in the room, and I came up my own topics plus some other people's 36 topics, about elephants in the room that we need to talk about, and hoarding is just one of them. Foster care is another one. Divorce, mental health, suicide. There's so many hidden things that we kind of push aside that we need to talk about.
Right. And like, I'll find candy wrappers in a bed, for example, and I'm like, where did you even A, find the candy? B,
right.
why is it in your bed and not the garbage? And there's a huge backstory, but it's all things like, even with my psychology background versus all of my life experience, I have no idea how to even begin to combat this myself. It's not something I've experienced, so it's just kind of weird, and I didn't think about that until just now. So you brought something into light that I've got to explore.
Well, I'm happy to help. Hopefully it's help. But those aha moments are in life, I think, are what are the mindset shifters. I have conversations with people and I'll be like, oh, I never realized that, and I think sometimes those are those pivotal moments where you go, oh, did not know. And I think that is part of, well, kind of as you mentioned, that's part of your pushing through, is getting those aha moments and then moving forward with them. Like, oh, okay.
Right.
So, Robert Garcia, I know you interviewed him recently, and he was talking about something a couple days ago around generating, creating webinars and creating training for people that anyone could attend. And I had that. I've known him for a couple of years, and I very much appreciate his encouragement for me to keep moving forward on some of these things. But it was like, okay, I've heard this 92 times. I get it. I needed to hear it 91 times, apparently, to get that shift.
Yeah, and I went to an event, it was 2.5 years ago. And it was all entrepreneurs, and I'm the idiot sitting in the corner that shouldn't have been there but wanted to learn.
No, does not make you an idiot. Just have to say, I have a similar story.
Working a regular job, like just trying to like get information, absorb everything. I only knew like 2 people there. I was out of state. Like it was just weird, but it was an out of body experience at the same time. And it took almost 2 years for everything that I experienced to really just collect in my brain and make come to fruition. But I actually invited Rob to that event. And by the time this episode airs, we should be on Rob's magazine on the next.
Oh, sweet.
So there's that. But he's actually blowing up my phone right now. But I talked to that dude like 8 times today. It was weird.
Well, that was yesterday for me.
He is an incredible person, and he provides so much for free. Like I feel like I owe him so much, but and I do, but it's just kind of funny because you hear the same stuff over and over and over and over, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I should have listened the first time. Like that made perfect sense 3 years ago. Why didn't I implement then?
I totally get that.
It's funny because it clicks different for every person. And like even until we started this podcast, we kind of just went with it and started just shooting out invites to everybody. And our first episode was with Dave Daly, who is an incredible person. And now, fast forward like 5 months, we're like, okay, we're not interviewing you or you or you. You know, like we're super selective. Even though
I'm honored.
We have like a really broad spectrum, and I love the topic and everything that you're working on. There's just some people in this industry that are just not, you don't mesh well with them. Well, I'll just put it that way.
It's the heart. When you meet, it's that energy and that heart that you somehow connect. And, I don't like the term networking. It just makes me think of spider webs. Not that I really care about spiders, but I mean, that doesn't bother me. I'm not a fan of the furry mice and things like that. But I was like, ooh, I have to what? But when you stop thinking about what that sounds like and you just realize that it's people making connections, and that's what you do when you go places, it just takes away all the I wouldn't say all the fear. It takes away the anxiety for me when I think about all I need to do is show up and be me and connect and listen and ask questions of people. It just totally reduces my fear of judgment or being, ridiculed for what I am choosing to talk about. It just, once you start showing up just as you are and authentically being present, it just, for me, it changed the game as far as being willing to figure out business, because I went to school for psychology. What in the world do I have starting a business? How did that happen?
Right.
And I know there's a lot of people that kind of stumble into it, whether we didn't like our jobs or we felt like we had something greater to do. or just, keeping a day job. I mean, I think it's Damon Johns, is that his name? The Shark Tank guy?
Yeah.
He kept his day job for like 5 years while he was building his business. And so that has given me hope.
That's the FUBU guy.
Yes. And so he mentored Charlinda Sykes, Mutt Sauce. She was at the Military Influencer Conference that I went to in September, which is similar to what you talked about. Like, I need to get to Washington, D.C. What? I live in the other Washington. Why do I need to go across the country? But it was one of those things where, like, I know I need to be there. Like, I need to be there. And I did, it turns out. But anyway, there's a whole nother, I got to meet Rob actually in person there, which was very cool. And a lot of other people that have supported me from afar. You do not have to be in the same town to support people, I'm telling you.
Right.
But
is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. I mean, but so they talk about friends being your chosen family. Well, I think you find entrepreneurial people that become your chosen family as well. And I've had a lot of support from those people. And so a few days ago, I did a post about being grateful for people in my life, which I am, but I also wanted to point out the relationships that I have had with men in the business community who have been so helpful and so on point with whatever it is that I'm struggling with. And that is something I really appreciate because I went through no, I did not go through it. I chose to get a necessary divorce. And when you go through that, some people want to hate on the opposite gender. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. That's not how I'm made, but also it's not fair because not all people are the same. And so for me, recognizing that men are very valuable pieces of my puzzle is just, I felt like I really needed to call that piece out because, it was Valentine's Day, right? And so guys get all kinds of crap for not buying whatever. And I'm like, that's really, why can't I buy my boyfriend chocolate, or what he likes? He's not a big fan of chocolate. But I mean, there's this expectation that guys have to do XYZ, it seems like, on a lot of these holidays. And I just think sometimes, why? Why should all the stuff be put on them?
What's funny is this is going to get me so much hate, and I'm totally open to it. I don't care. Hate me. I feel like Valentine's Day is absolute bullshit because if you're in a relationship, if you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever, you should appreciate that person daily. You should show them regularly that they are the biggest part of your life, or at least a huge part of it. And I'm talking louder because my wife's yelling at the kids. But
reality, see?
Weird. So anyway, I think that Valentine's Day is not the only day of the year that you should show gratitude to your significant other. That's why I absolutely hate it. My wife and I have been together 9 years total, and never once have I done anything for her on Valentine's Day. And that's the reason. Until this year, I decided, I got a wild hair and said, I'm going to get I had a custom made ring done that's got all of our kids' birthstones in it.
See, that's awesome and thoughtful.
Ever gotten on Valentine's Day.
But, I kind of have the same theory about Christmas. Why are we only nice in December? Why can't we be nice all year long? Why is it specific to that?
You want to start me
Well,
on
I mean,
attention? Let's talk.
yeah, let's not go on Christmas. 'Cause me and Kevin can go long ways on Christmas. And it's like my wife asked me on Valentine's Day, why didn't I buy her, cookies or chocolates or flowers? And it's like, well, one, because if I have to buy it on Valentine's Day to show you that I love you one time of the year, what the hell's wrong with me?
I can't disagree with that, because I mean, I did get my boyfriend a card, but then he had one of his buddies visiting and we went out to a nice lunch and it was great. It was a nice day. We went for a drive, and I just think that there's too much commercialism in a lot of this everything, and I'm like, I'd rather it be authentic and from the heart, no matter what day of the year it is, than some made up stupid thing, and for me, a lot of that is just why. I mean, one of the coolest things my boyfriend ever got me was tulips, these potted tulips. And most people are like, oh, what the heck, tulips, whatever, but they last a long time, they were beautiful, and it was unexpected. And
Right.
I think that sometimes resonates more for people, provided you're in the same kind of space where, hopefully, if you're married or in a relationship where you're both kind of at that same point, where I see too many where there's this imbalance of power and expectation. And I think if you're in a more balanced relationship, you're going to have a better time all the way around.
Well, it's funny too, because like year round, I'll buy my wife random stuff, and you even reacted to the T-shirt I got today, which I'm not going to get into, but
oh, I did see the T-shirt. Yes, it's pretty funny, actually.
I texted her. I was like, "What the hell did you spend $25 on at some consignment shop?" And she's like, "You and your notifications with your stupid bank account." And I'm like, I'm smart with my money.
Monitoring.
But and by the time that this episode comes out, so I'm just going to share it. But Misty just created this group, and she's trying to raise money and stuff like that. And I can't think of her last name for the life of me.
I want to say Henderson.
Henderson, yes. Misty Henderson. She has this awesome Facebook group. Find her, find it, join it. But I just ordered a bunch of shit from her. I spent there's
some cool stuff in that group, though.
I spent a lot more than I should have. I'm just going to say that much. But it's all for my wife. And it's going to be here in 2 weeks, maybe ish.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just things like that. It's not Valentine's Day. It's not Christmas. It's not Mother's Day. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Just keep the fire going. And, when it starts to smolder out, obviously it shouldn't get to that point. But it's always nice to add a little bit more wood onto it and keep that fire going, because it takes effort from both sides. I'm just going to say
it does. And it's even little things like, oh, I know he likes Mike and Ike's. I'm at the store. I'm going to pick up a little box of candy. Or, hey, I saw this T-shirt. Or there's times when I've traveled and he'll watch my dog, and I'll say, can I bring anything? He's like, I don't need anything. It's true. I probably don't need anything either. But I'm like, what can I get that he would use? And he wears a lot of different T-shirts, which is part of why I found that shirt you had hilarious. But because, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I know he'll use it and wear it out and whatever, and then it, you can move on, and I try to find it something useful or that I know he'll like. But it's still, I think, that thought of I thought of you, and doing that throughout the year is preferable, I think, and listening to what that person is telling you. Don't get them a bunch of crap they don't want.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be things.
No.
I wanted to bring this point up forever ago, but we keep, so.
Sorry.
No, we're both doing it. It's awesome. But we we buy crap that we don't need all the time, and people are paying money for storage units to fit the shit that they don't want in their house.
Yes.
Just to store it, and then they never touch it. And it's absolutely freaking ridiculous. So my point is it doesn't even have to be a thing. It doesn't have to be Mike and Ike's or a t-shirt or blankets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a good morning text every morning. It could be you going out of your way and saying, hey, I ran you a bath. There's candles going, whatever. I'll watch the kids for 2 hours, go soak. It's little things that don't even have to cost money or produce garbage.
Right. And that whole, hey, I'll watch the kid for a couple hours, or kids, is so valuable for, I would say, both moms and dads, but it seems like I hear a lot of moms saying they would love to be able to take a shower. They'd love to be able to take a bath. They'd love to go get their hair done or take a walk, and just something where they have the time. And, the time is the thing you never get back. And that's how I try to look at where am I spending my time? What am I doing for the people I love with my time? Because you can get more money, you can create more, but you don't get your time back. And I think it's important to recognize when people invest time in you. And I've had a lot of people invest time in me. And I know I could probably never pay it back, but I could sure figure out a way to pay it forward. And when you step into the gap, I think sometimes for your spouse or your significant other, that's what you're doing. You're telling them, I value you enough to give you my time, or to give you some time away.
Well, and I think to add on to that, the most precious commodity we have on this planet is time.
Mm-hmm. And you spend a lot of time getting money, and then if you spend all that money on things, that's all that becomes, is you spend all your time on money to get these things that you're stuffing in a storage unit and never looking at. So I've seen that one of the memes about, all this used to be money, all this used to be time, when you're looking at that storage unit. And when you look at it that way, I think you kind of step back and go, oh, maybe I don't need so much stuff.
It's kind of funny because my mother-in-law, and Kelly, I love you to death, but she is known as the shopping queen of the family. And it's so funny. It absolutely kills me because her house is gorgeous. And it's always so clean. They don't have a storage room full of shit. They don't have a storage facility. But it's so funny because every time we talk to her, she's at Hobby Lobby or whatever freaking store buying crap. And I don't know what they do with all of it. Like, they have to produce a lot of garbage or something. But my wife went to Walmart with her like a month ago. And she got back and she was like, I am never going to the store with her again in my life. They were at Walmart for like 2 hours, and they went to go get like bread and 2 other things in the grocery store. She come back with like 10 bags full of stuff. And I'm like, where the hell did you put all of this? So we always give her crap. Like, she's the Hobby Lobby queen and the shopping queen and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. I guess there's a difference between the shopaholics versus the hoarders, and I never really thought about that until today.
So there are people that shop and shop and shop and do bring all that stuff into their hoarded space, but there's other people that shop and actually like use the things they buy or give the presents away, that they purchased. And for me personally, shopping is kind of like, do I need to go to the store? Can I do it all can I shop at one store so I can get it all out of the way? although I will go on what I call a Walmart wander, which means I shouldn't bring anyone with me because I'm going to take my time.
It's funny because I live in a super, super small town. And when I go into town, which is only like a 15-minute drive, I'll like go to the first store I can see, get my stuff, and get out. My wife, on the other hand, like goes on to the other side of town, all the way into Walmart. Like, she won't take the kids, so she has her alone time. And like, it's like today, my son was like, "I want to go so bad." She was like, "I want to go myself. I'm not taking you. Give me my alone time." And so we played video games while she was gone. But it's just kind of funny because I hate going to the store. I hate grocery stores the most. I hate retail stores second, and gas stations third. Like, if I don't have to leave the house, I will not. And when we moved here, we got rid of literally half of the things we owned before we moved, and I still feel like we have twice as much as we need to because I've kind of gained that minimalist mentality. But now my wife is to the point, like, she used to give me shit saying I was a pack rat. And now she's like, "You really going to get rid of that and that and that and this and this?" Next time you go to the store, you can buy a new one, I guess. So balance, I think, is a huge key factor because I personally hate toys all over my house. And like, I love my air fryer so much. Like, I could get rid of everything else in my kitchen, just have the air fryer. But it's one of those things, like, you don't want too much to where you can't get around in your house. Like you mentioned, you can't go to the bathroom, you can't sleep, you can't sit down and watch TV. That's too much.
I kind of joke about, if people will say, "Oh, I'm a hoarder," and I'm like, well, in general, people who actually have that issue generally don't say that.
Right.
And so you might have clutter, but that is not the same as I can't use my shower because it's full of newspapers, or there's so much clutter on my kitchen counter I can't cook. There's goat paths through my house. There's a difference between I need to put some stuff away and I can't function in my space. So
and I have a really good friend who I'm going to share his story really quick without giving out too much, but he had a girlfriend with a bunch of kids. They bought this huge house and they ended up splitting up. It's his house. So he, in his living room, he's got a TV and some speaker systems and a chair. And he had a couch in there at one point, and he called me. He was like, "Dude, you got to get this couch out of my house now. Can't stand it." And I was like, "Okay." So I come over, I get the couch. It's at my cousin's house now. And he walked me through his house. He's got nothing in his kitchen except for the necessities. He's got nothing in his basement, nothing in his bedroom. Like, his bedroom consists of a dresser and a bed. That's it. And like, he's so minimalist that anything like a couch drove him crazy. And that, I think that's awesome. Like, he's got one room in his house. His uncle just passed away not too long ago, and he acquired all of his firearms. So he's got an entire room just full of guns. But that's it. Like, every other room in his house has nothing. And honestly, I feel personally that that's awesome. Like, that's how I want to be. Like, you look at my room, it's freaking gross. But
you're not seeing what's behind me right now as I've been moving things around.
Like, I got my filing cabinet with my kids' school stuff, gun safe, bookshelf. But that's not showing what's on the floor. I mean, I have a little pathway in here, and this is a tiny room. It's technically a closet. And so, like, I like my spaces just small and empty. I don't know. And so it's kind of funny just to see the dynamic between people. Like, you go to some people's houses and you're like, God, you got a lot of shit. And then you go to other people's houses and you're like, your house is awesome, it's perfect. And then you go to other people's houses and you're like, where do you sit?
Yes. And, oh, let me clear a space so you can sit. And I mean, I'm not saying I haven't done that, like I have to move the laundry or something, but I hate that feeling of I can't welcome you in because I have too much stuff in this main
Right.
space, you know? But I'm also a fan of rooms with doors, because just because you have people over doesn't mean they need to be in your whole house. I'm just saying that, you know, it's okay to shut the door. And as a person who, so there's something we call doorbell dread. That doorbell rings, somebody knocks and you're not expecting it, and you're like, ooh, you know? And I know exactly what that feels like, because it doesn't matter how clean or not my house is, I still worry someone's going to judge me for the dust bunny or the dog hair or the laundry I need to put away or whatever, you know? And the truth is most people live in their houses, unless you have a pristine house, and I do not. But I mean that it's very real to have that. And like your friend with the couch, for him, that was probably very anxiety producing to have this thing in his way that he didn't want there. And so it's very real that people are very sensitive about their space, I think, you know, especially I would say if you don't have a hoarding issue. You want it a certain way.
Right.
But hoarding is another piece of it where people don't, you know, you can't just march into someone's house and say, hey, we're going to fix your stuff now. Would you want someone to do that at your house? No.
Yeah, you're not going to walk in and say, we got a dumpster, we're throwing out this. No. Like,
you're going to tick them off. They're going to probably kick into trauma response high gear.
Panic attack, anxiety.
Panic and anxiety.
Hyperventilation.
But that doesn't, yeah. You know, but the sad part of that is we often don't intervene or do anything until it's at that crisis point. And right. I would like people to have more tools to have conversations and at least be able to say, I'm concerned about the situation, even if you can't solve it. You could at least be letting them know you see them as a person and that you're concerned about their well-being. But yeah, I have a lot more thoughts about that, but I see the challenges, and I want people to know that they don't have to do it alone. They don't have to face alone.
I think it's very similar to, say somebody's addicted to cocaine.
Mm-hmm. It's
the same thing, right? I mean, you have an addiction, you have a problem. Maybe you don't recognize it as a problem. Everybody else does. You have to portray that to them in such a way that says, we care about you, however, you're doing this, and this is not acceptable. But on the flip side, and this is my experience, and I don't have any experience with hoarding personally, but you can't help somebody unless they're willing to help themselves.
You have to be willing to acknowledge, A, that there's a problem, B, that you might need to do something about it. And unfortunately, people don't always recognize their issue. And I see people being evicted because every kind of help is being offered to them to help them retain housing, and they choose not to allow anyone to help. And so then they're evicted and their stuff is on the street, and they blame everyone for putting their stuff on the street, yet someone did try to help, someone did try to intervene, someone did try to offer it. And if they refuse the help, sometimes people just have to fall. And it's really hard to watch that fall when you know you know, you offered that person with a cocaine addiction treatment and they refused, you know, and now they're living in a very bad situation. I mean, you can only do so much for someone who refuses the help. And some people say hoarding is not an addiction, but I see so many behavioral similarities that how can it not be in some form, you know, some form of an addiction.
Completely agree.
Well, I mean, to add on that, one of my wife's friends is just been diagnosed clinically bipolar, and she's super depressed about that. And like, she won't get any help. She won't ask for any help. She won't do anything. And you know, she goes, "Well, what can I do?" I go, "You can't do anything. She has to hit rock bottom before she decides to make that change." And like, you kind of tell that it broke her heart on it, but it's like, she's got to be able to make that change in her mind, and you're not going to force her to do that.
Well, not only that,
yeah,
they have to learn what rock bottom is.
And rock bottom is different for every person,
right.
You know. For one person, it might be, oh no, I'm going to lose my house. For someone else, it might be, I'm going to lose my car, you know, or my kids, or nobody in my family's talking to me, or jail, you know. I mean, it's different for every person, and you really can't force someone. You can be there, you can give them resources and tools, but you can't force it. Unfortunately, in some cases, you wish you could, at least to get them. I think it's not necessarily you want to see them hurt, but you think if they'd hurry up and hit rock bottom, then they could start bouncing up.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing. I mean, with kids, because you just want to help, and you just want to see them flourish and just grow, but everyone's going to make their own decisions. They're going to make their own mistakes, and they're going to kind of create their own path in life. And you just kind of, when it's the right time, it's the right time. That way you can come in and intervene. Until then, they're going to tell you to, I'll refrain from my words.
Go away.
Yeah, that.
I started using the term sailor words. I'm like, just a moment. Insert sailor words. Okay, now we can keep going, because that's what I was. And I'm like, I've had someone say to me, "You don't know how to cuss, do you?" Wait, I just met you. I'm not revealing my whole self yet. Plus, I can temper it as needed, but you know.
This podcast,
I like to say,
really
my French.
This podcast is usually really open, and we do swear a lot more than we probably should. But I'm trying to watch it, especially around women. So that's why I haven't said too much.
I have a couple go-to words that I'm probably not too proud of. But in general, I try to be cognizant of where I'm at. But my dad was also a sailor, so I'm pretty sure I knew some of those words before I knew good words, shall we say. But I mean, sometimes only certain words fit. And so therefore I believe that having that skill set is also an asset at times, sometimes a liability, but it's something I do enjoy about my connections with the military, is that for the most part I can be pretty free with the people that I have encountered. And there's kind of this level of awareness that if you say a certain word, you mean it, and that's okay.
Well, not only that, they say that people that swear more are more honest.
I've heard that they're even more intelligent. I read something recently, so I'm like, well, okay then. I'm in good company.
That's why you'll hear me pause and then like find a new word. But anyway, I don't want to keep you all night because I could seriously sit here and talk to you forever. So my big takeaway from tonight, and I'm not going to use the triple word that we stole from Julian Bradley that we've used on like 18 episodes.
Ah, come on. I mean, we're gonna owe him tacos if we keep using it.
We're gonna owe
I
him
don't
our freaking soul.
I
So
don't want to have to do that either.
Tammi, do you have a big takeaway from this episode that you did with us?
I appreciate the authentic conversation, and being able to navigate tough topics that might annoy people, like our take on certain things, but I appreciate us being able to have that conversation and segue. I appreciate I felt like I was at the kitchen table having a conversation, and I like that. I appreciate that atmosphere in life, but in a podcast. That's it's different than what I've experienced, but I like it.
I will say I appreciate that so much because that's one of our big things. And I think that's what gets people to draw out their openness and say, I've never shared this before, but let me tell you. My big takeaway is everybody needs help in some form. It's a matter of what, when, why, and how. Because whether it be hoarding, whether it be drugs, alcohol, hell, even just depression or anything like that, everybody has a story that nobody knows about. So, one thing that I love to do is just I'll randomly message people, whether it be Facebook, text message, Instagram, whatever. And I'll be like, hey, we haven't talked for a long time. I haven't seen anything from you lately. Hope you're doing okay. If not, let me know. I'll reach out and I'll find you anybody that could be holy shit, of assistance to you to make your life better. And I'll get people every single time. Holy shit, I didn't think anybody cared. Like, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Whatever it may be. But so my point is, if you see something, say something, reach out, and just be a good person. I mean, life isn't about you. It's about helping other people and bringing each other up together.
A rising tide lifts all ships. And I have never felt that more than I have in this past few months, but this past week or so especially. So
not only that, it's not the water around the ship that makes it sink, it's the water that's inside of it.
Yep, that gets in.
Brad, I know you came in late. Do you have anything?
I came in way late, so I'm like grasping at straws of what you might have talked about, and I'm looking like a squirrel, looking at all the screens. Like, okay, just hold together until 11 o'clock. My takeaway is the ability to freely talk with people on this
freely
podcast.
Talk about the difficult conversations.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you get on social media and you are literally attacked personally if you bring up something like that. Where here we can talk about it and go over it and we can get it out, and it's not like somebody's trying to shove something down your throat. And I think that's one big thing that me and Kevin have really strived for this podcast, is to make it like a talk at the kitchen table. and just kind of be genuine as much as we can, because there's just not much of that left anymore.
And that's where the connections happen, I think, when you can have a cup of coffee, sit around the table and just, you know, have a conversation. And I miss that ability. It seems like not everyone can put the phone down and have a conversation anymore. And so I appreciate that that aspect of it. And I think you guys are doing a great job at bringing that kind of atmosphere to what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. And we appreciate you giving us your time, even though we went an hour and a half.
Well, I'm sure you have editing tools. So
our record so far is 2.5 hours. So.
Oh, wow.
That was a long episode.
So, again, we appreciate you, and I appreciate the effort that you are putting in to your mission, because your mission is extremely important. Because even with all the TV shows, there's hoarders, there's extreme cheapskates, there's minimalists, there's all these things, but it's just TV. And people need to realize that there's a separation between television and real life. And so I think what you're doing is phenomenal. The fact that you're not on one of those shows helping these people is ridiculous, and you should be.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping to bring some sort of, I have some things that I'm working on that I would like to see more things come about. And I'm hoping to bring a broader voice to some of these things.
I hope that we can reach some people that you haven't, and somebody reaches out and says, hey, I know somebody, or I have this problem, or I know this person, somebody. Hopefully our marketing can help you.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate what you all are doing here.